Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Satanic Hispanics. It's an anthology film, it's a Shudder exclusive, and it's coming to Shudder on Friday, March 8th. So this is a no spoiler review. Now, I really enjoy anthologies, I will say that, but this one actually was very middling for me, and that really kind of sucks just because all of the directors involved with this I like. To varying degrees, like some of them I think are really great, but all of them I think at least are pretty good. So for it to be kind of more middling for me, it was just a bit of a letdown, but maybe you won't feel that way. And I will say that if you're the type of person who feels like if you find one story in an anthology, then it was worth watching, then this is worth watching, because there is one story in particular that is quite good in my opinion, and it'll be no surprise when people find out who the director was that it's quite good, and obviously I'll talk about that. So I'm going to go over each one. I'm going to give my rating out of 5 stars with half stars in play for each one of those, and then an overall rating for the film itself. So again, Shudder exclusive, coming Friday, March 8th. So the wraparound story that kind of ties everything together, because you always have to have that for anthology films, is called The Traveler. Now, this one's directed by Mike Mendez, who did Big Ass Spider, La Valantula, and The Grave Dancers, which I believe The Grave Dancers was one of those, like, 8 films to die for that they put out many years ago. So I remember watching that one, and I did see Big Ass Spider, and I really like Big Ass Spider. Have not seen La Valantula, but kind of want to. Let me know in the comments if it's worth it. This is the wraparound story, like I said. The beginning of it is quite intriguing. They do set up a very interesting story, a very good concept. The execution of it kind of wavers. Like, there are moments where you're kind of like, ooh, I'm really into this. Where are we going with this? This is super cool. And then there are moments where it feels like it's just not hitting very well. And one of the big reasons that it doesn't hit very well for me is the humor in it. There is a humor to it, but because of the premise of it, and this kind of like mysterious aspect that seems kind of more serious, it feels like it conflicts. The humor feels like it's creating road bumps in the road of this story to kind of get where we're going. And on top of that, the humor's not that funny. It's just not very well written either, so that kind of contributes even more to it being like a road bump when you're trying to get through the story. The acting is serviceable in this. I won't say it's great. For the most part, the acting is not great in this particular one. It's okay. That's what I'll say. You know, some people do a little bit better than others, but it's okay, unfortunately. Information does get presented at good intervals. I did like that about it. The mystery that's kind of at play here, I think they did a great job of kind of being like, now here's a little something to keep you interested. Now here's a little something. So you don't get too bored with it. Now, again, like I said, you know, tonally, it's kind of messed up because of the comedy aspect, but I think you stay with it, and you really do want to know where it's going in the end. They do go hard at stereotypes in this, though. I understand what they were trying to do, because this is a Hispanic-made film in general, that they want to kind of call out some stereotypes that are pretty ridiculous that get used in the United States. And potentially abroad. I don't know for sure, because I haven't really been abroad. I've been in Canada once, that's it. But I feel like they go a little too hard at it, and it seems very throwaway the way that they do it. I think it could have been done in a little bit more of a nuanced way, but at the same time, like, that's their story to tell in particular. Like, me saying this, like, I'm not a Hispanic person. I don't deal with the stereotypes of it. I don't participate in perpetuating stereotypes of that type of stuff, but it feels weird to me to kind of like make this comment, but I feel like I have to make the comment that it felt like it was pretty heavy-handed, and it wasn't like, it was kind of just like thrown at you. It is the biggest issue. If it was incorporated into the story in a much better way, it would have made a lot more sense and had a lot more impact, but it's just kind of like they just throw them at you with just these like random comments, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. Okay, I guess. There is one really cool looking instance of costuming in it, and it's at the end. You'll know what I mean if you watch it. The end of the story, which is the end of the film, Really cool costuming, really cool practical effects. Really love that look. Very, very cool. You know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. Unfortunately, the end is kind of anticlimactic, in my opinion. I was hoping that, because they were building towards something very interesting, and you do feel it building, and then they got there, and like there is like a cool sequence, but then the very end of it, it was just kind of like, oh, like we're done now. Oh, okay, it's over. Okay, got it. But it wasn't bad. So out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm giving it a 2.5-star rating. I'm kind of, between not liking it so much versus liking it. So 2.5 stars on that one. So the first full story that you end up getting is Tambien Lo Vi. This one is done by Demian Rugna, who did Terrified and When Evil Lurks. This is the best story in the entire thing. It's probably not a big surprise to people who have seen his works of Terrified and When Evil Lurks, because they're wonderful. I still have not seen Terrified yet, but I've heard only good things. I have seen When Evil Lurks, and it is really good. And this short is pretty nice. This one shot very well and has nice camera movements, which is no surprise there because Rugna knows what he's doing. He's very, very much established and has shown that he really has a great eye and is really great at directing. And whoever he works with for cinematography also really knows what they're doing. The premise seems interesting. It's one of those things where you really do want to know, where are we going with this? It's a little confusing the way it starts. You're just like, what are we trying to get at? But you really want to know where it's going because they throw enough interesting stuff at you. It's just like, I need to know the overall picture of this. The acting is quite good in this one. It's probably the best acting of any of the sequences or segments. So really like the acting in it. Unfortunately, some of the lighting is problematic. It's in like a old house. Oh, and this would be a good time for me to say, like, I'm not giving synopses on this because they are such short films, like short stories. Like giving a synopsis, I feel like is just giving too much away because they're short. But anyway, the lighting is problematic because it's in like a kind of dark house at times, and there are literally times where like there's a shot of someone and you can't even see anything really. So it's like that's an issue, but then there are other scenes where it's fine. Just a small issue there. There's a pretty great moment when things kick into high gear. When things really get going, the horror really pops in. It pops in, and it pops in a really big way. And practical effects are involved. Awesome practical effects. The best practical effects other than the end of the film in this. Tension is built and maintained pretty well in this one. Big fan of how I think just in general, how Rugna is able to do this. Like, just create tension and build it up and maintain that tension. You just don't let go. If you haven't seen When Evil Lurks, if you like that type of thing, feeling tense and feeling tension the whole way through, like that film does it for sure. And it's echoed in this. Practical effects are pretty awesome, like I was saying. And it seems like there should have been a little bit more to the ending. This is yet again one of those endings where it's just like the wraparound story, where it's kind of like, oh, we're done? It's kind of weird that we're done. Like, this is how we're going to end it. But overall, still a very good experience. Out of 5 stars, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. A quite good 3.5 stars. It's the high water mark for this anthology. The next one is El Vampiro. You can guess what that's about. Directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who did, obviously, The Blair Witch Project, Exists, VHS 2, Seventh Moon, and my favorite film of his, Altered. If you haven't seen that one, it's a reverse alien abduction film that's actually quite good. Very underrated. A lot of people don't know about it, but look for Altered. Okay, so El Vampiro wastes no time getting to the comedy. The comedy is a very mixed bag, unfortunately, and by that I mean it's not a tonal issue, because from the beginning, it's not serious, it's ridiculous, it's over the top, it's comedic. The comedy's not very funny. There is some of it that is, but for the most part, the comedy is just kind of like, okay, this is what we're doing, like we're not even trying. We're not trying that hard to even make it all that funny, although there are those few jokes where you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of funny, but other ones, they're very throwaway, and it just kind of seems like someone wrote this in just an afternoon. Maybe even less time than that. The dialogue seems like pure time wasting, especially when one character should be doing something else. You'll know what I'm talking about if you have watched this. There's something that the main character should very clearly be doing in this, and he's not doing it because it's like these side tangents all the time, and it's like elongated dialogue that you don't need, that nobody needs, is literally time wasting, and it's wasting time for what needs to be done with the main character too. So you're just like, none of this makes any sense. It's just kind of ridiculous and dumb. It feels very meandering, and like maybe there wasn't even a script. Like I said, like it's like it was written in the afternoon. Maybe there wasn't even a script, because a lot of this stuff seems just so random. It's literally like, okay, now the character's doing this, and then we'll just do this. Okay, and then we'll throw a few jokes in there that we're kind of half-assing. Okay, and then we'll do this. Like, that's how the entire thing felt. Like, it felt like there was no real heart in it, honestly. It has okay practical effects. Not the greatest, but okay practical effects. The characters are stupid. And when I say stupid, I mean the characters have no intelligence in this story. They're all stupid. Every single character you encounter is stupid. So it's really hard to really root for anyone or to really care that much, because they're all doing stupid things. So yeah, that's a big problem. They do try to shift tones at the end, and it just does not work. It just does not work when they try and shift tones at the end, because they didn't lay the groundwork for that to actually be effective. So not the worst though. Like, it's shot pretty well. The music's pretty good. Like I said, there were a few good jokes. So overall, I'm giving it 2 stars. The next one is called Nahuales. This one was directed by Gigi Saul Guerrero, who did Culture Shock, Bingo Hell, and a segment in VHS 85, which I really liked her segment in 85. This feels high stakes from the start, although you don't know why. A good job of kind of making things feel urgent, making things feel tense from the beginning, and just kind of hitting the ground running. So I really like how she started it that way. The dialogue is unfortunately overly explanatory. They just keep telling you and telling you and telling you things that you don't need to be hearing, because you should be showing and not telling, really. The acting is pretty good. This is actually the one I think that had probably the second best acting in it. It's pretty solid acting in this one. There's a lore aspect to the story that I think is quite interesting. It's always really interesting to, get pieces of lore from other countries. And I really appreciate the fact that that was baked into the story. Unfortunately, the story as a whole doesn't end up working all that great. But the lore aspect of it is probably the most interesting aspect. And it's also shot pretty well. She did a good job shooting it. I've never questioned her abilities as a director or from a cinematic standpoint, but unfortunately the scenes are painfully drawn out. This is another one where I feel like there may not have even been a script, because each scene that goes on way too long. It's just the same thing. The film goes nowhere, basically. So I don't know. It's just a kind of a waste of time, unfortunately. But out of 5 stars, I'm giving it 1.5 star rating. It is the lowest one for me for the entire anthology, unfortunately. And then the last one, The Hammer of Zanzibar. This one was directed by Alejandro Brugues, who did One of the Dead, ABC's of Death 2 segment, and Nightmare Cinema. By the way, the short he did for Nightmare Cinema is awesome. I have not seen One of the Dead, unfortunately, but I do need to at some point. But see Nightmare Cinema, it's pretty solid, and his segment in particular is really good. I think when I reviewed it, his segment was my favorite, if I'm remembering correctly. Very cool. So the opening premise for this one seems promising. It's interesting. They hit you with the comedy, again, like some of the other ones. They hit you with the comedy immediately. I think the comedy, for the most part, works okay in this one, although there are certain moments where they keep hammering like one comedic thing, and you're just like, okay, like, we get it. It's not that funny when you just keep saying it and you just keep bringing that stuff up. Like, it was funny for a bit, but this type of comedy gets old kind of fast, and that's kind of unfortunate for it. It does get ridiculous. It becomes it becomes clear relatively early that it's going to be a bit over the top. It's going to be a bit ridiculous. So you kind of have to embrace that aspect of it. They do put a flashback into it that seems very poorly placed. It really messes up the flow of the story and seems like it doesn't even matter to the story. Now, if this is a flashback that happened like in the very beginning of it, it would actually have some good context and set you up for things that would be interesting to know as they then progress with the story. But the way they do it is they start from a different point, and then decent amount in, they give you this flashback, and you're just like, we already have all the information about this. Why are we seeing this flashback? And it just seems like it doesn't matter at all, and it totally messes up the flow of the story. So that was a big mistake, in my opinion. This one also has humor. It's okay, like I said, pretty, half and half. There was some really fun music in this. There's one song in particular. I think Jonah Rodrigues is in this. I had said Rodriguez before for my review of Destroy All Neighbors, but I heard him say it on a video on YouTube that I was watching of him. It was through Severin. He was going into the cellar at Severin with Alex Winter. Great video, by the way. And he said Rodrigues. So I was like, oh, okay. So most people know him as Jonah Ray, but he's going by Jonah Rodrigues now. But he's in it. I really like his acting. It's usually pretty over the top and ridiculous and comedic. So I liked him in this. And I think the piece of music that I really liked in this, from what my ear could hear, I think it was him singing that song. And it was really cool. It was a really fun song. I really like how they incorporated it. The ending is okay on this one. It's not a bad ending. It's decent. One of the better endings of these. So yeah. So in the end, the Hammer of Zanzibar, I'm giving it an overall 2.5-star rating because I'm pretty in the middle on it. So overall, when I average this out, it gives the anthology itself a 2.4 out of 5 stars. So we're rounding up. It's a 2.5. So very middling. There's some highs. There's some lows. There's some in between. More in between than anything. But this is where I'd love to hear from other people. Get your thoughts on this one. Go ahead and put it in the comments, especially if you liked it more than I did. Let me know what you think maybe I'm missing. We can have a dialogue about it. But do me a quick favor. Hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. That is the best way to repay me for this free content. Hit the thumbs up if you want to help me with the YouTube algorithm for this video. That would be great. And you can hit the notification bell button because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing it pretty consistently. But anyway, thank you for checking this out, taking your time to do that. I do appreciate it. And until next time, keep it brutal.